Joining us now on the Oakland County MegaCast, Dr. Gerald Hill. He's the superintendent for the West Bloomfield School District. Superintendent, great to have you with us again, as always.
Thank you, Ronnie. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'd like to start out by just thanking you and your cast of supporting characters for doing this. I listen to as much as I can, and I learn a whole lot about our community, our greater West Bloomfield and Oakland County community. It's great.
Well, we're happy to do it and happy to share. And I always say I learn something new every single day doing this show. And we hope that people also start to tune in, because one of the good things about this is we are able to speak to people at length to get out the information, so you're not condensed into a 10-15 second soundbite. And with that, boy, since the last time we spoke, there's been a lot going on for you and your team.
Yes, it's a never-ending journey. And actually, with the closing of 2020, we're going to do something special to close out the year. And we're going to try to be thinking of the top 10 reasons we're looking forward to 2021. It'll be interesting to hear what those are when we develop that.
So many people will be joining you in that endeavor, right? Because 2020 has been quite the year. And with that, before we get to some of the issues, Roosevelt, we know it's been a big issue. But before we get to that, can we talk a little bit about remote learning? I know it was brought up the other night in the meeting, the school board meeting. These are tough times, because how do you put a plan together when you don't know where the numbers are going to be when it comes to the virus and the outbreaks?
Yes, it is. It's a Herculean task in terms of planning. We need to be planning for all eventualities, all conditions, and I need to just compliment our planning team. You've had Deanna Barish on several times, and she and her team from the educational perspective are doing great work. Our operations people, Eric Whitney with our human resources and Kyle Anderson with our operations, multiple plans. We meet constantly reviewing all those plans, and we need to be able to pivot on a dime. And for example, today, we normally do a signing day, and it's usually hosted at the high school in the ice center, and we're doing it outside. Hopefully it won't be too cold, but we're having an opportunity to honor students in an outside setting so their families can come. It won't be as many public as we normally have, but we're excited about that. That's just a small piece. Regarding remote learning, our teachers have just been remarkable in their resiliency and adaptation skills through this process. And they continually have students at the center of their thinking. And when you look at, we're having Twitter contests going on right now, and there's just some amazing things going on with the students. And I know there's a choir performance this evening, for example. Our high school choirs will be presenting. There was a fantastic choir YouTube presentation the other day put up by our middle schools. And so it's not normal, but it's really shows the depth of commitment from our staff. They haven't given up. They're there for the students, and everybody realizes and would want to have in-person learning instead of. But I think when we do go back to in-person learning, we will have learned some really nifty new ways of teaching and learning that we can incorporate it into our regular routines.
So is there a plan right now to possibly return students like back to the classrooms in January?
Yeah, we have a plan right now. As you know, our board reconfirmed what we're doing right now through January the 15th. And the reason that we're totally remote right now is we look at the weekly COVID-19 report that we get from Oakland County Health Department, and that's been going up since the end of October when we went into remote, and it looks like it may be leveling off right now. We didn't experience quite the bump post-Thanksgiving that a lot of people were anticipating in terms of spread, but the COVID-19 presence has remained steady, and we're still at a level E for Oakland County, and that's the highest level of concern. When we went remote, we had been in level C for quite a long time. We were in D for about a day and a half, and we went to E. in a real short period of time, and we've been steady there. I hope that by January the 15th, that maybe that'll be our last day for fully remote for our K through 8. We're meeting with the health department that week prior. We'll be making another recommendation to our Board of Education. And if we can get a handle on if everybody would mask up and socially distance and follow reasonable guidelines, then we could all be better off, and we could get our kids back fully. Now, the high school, that's been really difficult because the scheduling at a high school is more personalized, and you can't put students in a cohort group of 13 or 15 or 20 because they all have different needs and schedules, so they're still remote. If we can get to a level B on the scheme, so it's flattening and the risk is a little bit lower, we will be able to then consider high school fully, not fully, probably hybrid to start with, but we're not there. We're not even close to that right now.
We talked to a couple of your high school students recently, and the one said, I never thought I'd be so excited to have to get dressed and go to school and sit in a classroom. So I know that for so many of them, especially the seniors, they are looking forward to and hoping to be able to get back in those classrooms, at least, like you said, on some hybrid situation before they end their high school careers.
Yeah, that would be nice, and I need to commend the high school students, and I've seen them on the MegaCast, and they're very positive and they're very optimistic. And I know this is wearing on everybody, this being the totally remote learning, and it's not a desired state. But given the circumstances, their resiliency is coming through, and they're doing some amazing work. We had there was a Michigan Design Prize contest going on yesterday. It was an award ceremony. It wasn't high school, it was elementary, middle, and high. But we had, speaking of Roosevelt Elementary, you mentioned earlier, the West Bloomfield School District, Roosevelt Elementary, took 5 out of the 6 elementary prizes, and that's a statewide contest. And so we're carrying on. Those students were working with designers, we're doing their creative problem solving, creative thinking, putting together projects. And so that shows that we can still carry on. It would be better in person, but it's not totally devoid of some really noteworthy accomplishments of students and some great work on the part of staff.
Well, and with that too, it's really teaching some of these students lifelong lessons that they can carry with them from this point out.
Yeah, very true. And one of those lessons is things aren't always going to be the same, especially in these times. Wait for tomorrow and there'll be different conditions. So you need to just anticipate. And then you need to have sort of the attitude of making the best of a situation and looking for the positives, because it's real easy to get down and depressed and discouraged. And I know I hear that from parents a lot. We have some parents that would like to be fully in person right now and have felt that way all year for a variety of reasons. And we just work with them, and we have to take the safety of staff and students as our top priority. And we actually had to go remote because we were at a point where we couldn't keep the school staffed with all of the teachers and adults that were either in quarantine or had COVID themselves. And so that was difficult, but we had to make that decision.
So as the superintendent, you have to look at the big picture. And that big picture involves the budget, which is directly tied to enrollment. Can you talk a little bit about that and where your district stands?
Sure. We realized as we were building this year's budget, going back to March when we shut down, the state of Michigan was not passing a school budget. They didn't pass it. They put it off. Our board had to adopt a budget not knowing what the state of Michigan was going to provide in terms of resources. There was talk at that point of perhaps losing as much as $700 million of funding from the state, and we had to plan accordingly. And so we had several budget scenarios that we had developed pending whatever the decision was. And the federal government, through the CARES Act, gave a whopping $230,000 to the West Bloomfield School District, which did not help much. And they did not come through with other funding for local and state governments. They're still debating it. I heard last night maybe something's going to happen this week. I'm not going to hold my breath. So the board has to make all these decisions about finances, and we're dependent upon the state and federal government for the revenue. So given that, we also had a report last spring showing that over time, we have a steady decline in enrollment population throughout Southeast Michigan, and West Bloomfield is no exception to that. And you can see it on the data where it might be 1 or 2% a year, but over time that builds up. And we have 5 elementary schools right now, and the data shows that we have about 30% excess space, depending on how you look at it. And that's not going to, we don't see rising enrollment. We see this sort of continual decline. So combining the uncertainty financially, revenue picture from the state and the federal government with our demographics, the board commissioned a school efficiency study task force to take a deeper look at where we are in terms of school efficiency. So that task force made a report on December 7th, and the board discussed that report, and we're moving forward from there. But the biggest factor really is one of uncertainty over funding, combined with a relatively certain projection demographically, because the births have not been there. And so every school district in our area is looking at that. And so we're just needing to be prepared to, we're going to have to cut the budget. It's a matter of how. Do we cut teachers, or do we cut excess capacity and operate more efficiently? It's sort of the question before the board.
So as I will let you know, I live in Keiko Harbor. I do not have kids, but I do know a lot of my neighbors. Their kids do go to Roosevelt, and it's been a very passionate debate for the Keiko Harbor residents over the past month or so regarding Roosevelt and the possibility of that school closing. I think a lot of people respect your decision this week to say we're going to look at this further, but other people still feel as if the district cheated them and gave them a bait and switch when it came to the bond issue. And now you're just kind of kicking the can down the road, hoping the spotlight goes away about the possible closure of Roosevelt. How do you want to address that issue?
Yeah, regarding the bond issue, the discussion at that time, it wasn't a bait and switch in terms of whether we keep Roosevelt open or close it. The discussion at the time of the bond, before we floated the bond for the public, was, do we house the students that were currently housed at Roosevelt? Do we change the location of the entire school to Abbott Middle School once the new middle school is built? And that was the discussion. And the discussion, after getting feedback from everybody, was there was no desire to move Roosevelt in its entirety, the operations from the current building of Roosevelt to Abbott. And so that we didn't do that. And then instead, we have plans and had plans to renovate schools. Now, renovate by our standards was we were going to update the systems, get new furnishings, make the learning environments more flexible, et cetera. And we were on a plan to do that. And Roosevelt was intended to be worked on this coming summer. But with this new information, that's been paused because we don't know where we're going to be. We're not considering moving Roosevelt intact as it is to Abbott anymore. It's really a decision, do we need 5 elementary schools or 4 elementary schools? And that topic is what we're going to do the further studying on. I mean, I thought the board had a really good discussion the other night at the board table. They had, the board president, Stacy Brickman, had this 6 thinking hats approach. And so we have the issue and the recommendation before the board. So they looked at it first from a red hat which is an emotional perspective, a feelings hat. They looked at it from the white hat, which is what kind of information is available, what do we know, what are the facts. They looked at it from the black hat, what are the negative aspects, the public perception, the long history. I mean, there are a whole lot of easy to come up with judgment hats. Then they looked at it from a yellow hat, which is more of the benefits hat, what positive could come out of this. And then we had a green hat, which is a more creative thinking. What can we do creatively to resolve the issue? And then finally, it was the thinking hat. What additional information is needed? That additional information, when the board went through that, I'm taking notes as I'm listening to the discussion. That's where we ended up coming up with about 10 or 15 items that we need to flesh out more fully. And so we will take January through August and do that study, come back to the board in late August or early September and revisit the issue. In the meantime, having continual dialogue internally and externally as we proceed through this situation. The other thing that'll happen between now and August is we'll have a much clearer picture of the budget. Where is the state funding? Where is the federal funding? There was a report, I think it was last Thursday, Wanda Cook Robinson was on a team, and they made a report saying that the state of Michigan needs $1 billion, billion with a B, to address what's been happening under COVID-19 and just to catch up. And that's not even to maintain what was happening before, that's just to catch up. Well, I don't think our state has $1 billion sitting around somewhere, unless it's going to be coming from the federal government. And so there are a lot of actions that will happen between now and August that will impact the decision locally on what we do budget-wise.
Well, and are you worried that the longer the pandemic wears on, more and more kids and more parents are going to choose to pull their kids out of public education because there are some schools that are still allowing for in-person teaching right now?
There are some. I don't know that they have the capacity to take all of the public school students. We're not alone in what we're doing as a school district. And so when you look at all of the Oakland County schools, I think there are a handful that are still trying to do the hybrid. But for the most part, because of the recent surge, even those that started, I know our neighboring school districts, they were in operation for a week and they had to shut down because of the surge in COVID-19. So our enrollment decline is more related to lack of live births than it is to pandemic remote learning. It's not ideal, and if we were those only ones doing it, I would have a worry, but we're in with everybody else, and actually our program has been fairly robust on the remote side, so we feel we will be competitive.
So with that, Dr. Hill, I know that you have a tight schedule today, but good news coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about the signing day going on today? Really, some big news for some of the athletes coming out of the West Bloomfield School District.
Yeah, we have 4 football players that'll be signing, and we have 2 female athletes that actually signed in November. We're giving them an opportunity to be recognized. It's a big event, and we have, as you know, under Coach Bellamy in football, we have some outstanding opportunities for students. And I guess the big one will be, where is Donovan Edwards going to sign? Who is he going to sign with? And it'll be an important day for him. We'll be able to honor and celebrate what he's been doing and look forward to the future. But all of the students that are signing today and that have in the past, it's a great opportunity for them to continue their education and do it in a manner that they get scholarships. That's just fantastic. And I'm very proud of all the staff and coaches at our high school. They put students first, and they're student athletes. And you could not be signing a letter of intent if you didn't have the academic support and the skill set, because you're not going to be signed by anybody without that.
So have you been allowed on that inside decision with Donovan Edwards? Do you know where he's going?
I had a conversation with him before one of the football games, and he was lamenting being remote learning, and And he said, I might not even be here after a certain day. And I said, well, where are you going to be? Well, he didn't tell me.
So you'll be
Oh,
on the edge just along with everyone else.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you, Superintendent. I know that Tyler's going to be out there a little bit later today for the signing, and we'll be airing that as well. But again, a lot, like you said, a lot goes to the coaches and the teachers for getting these student athletes to this point and doing it for so many of them over this past year. So that says a lot about your team as well. So we want to say thank you for your time. Always appreciated.
Thank you.